Hey, gang, look, we're on site
Hey.
with Brandon, Beat Installer. Hey, Classy. Everyone's on the road except for me. I feel like I'm sitting in the home base here. How y'all doing?
Good. How's it
Good.
going, man?
Pretty good, pretty good. So what are you up to, Brandon? It looks like you're doing something important over there.
Oh, I had a friend of a friend who needed like 40 Cat 6A lines dropped into a house in like a week before his contractors start closing up the walls. So I'm like, right before my vacation, I'm like, all right, man, let's do it. So I got a crew up there in the second floor, right up there, over there. And they're going from one side of the attic to the other with no space. We've got like 40 holes cut in the ceiling and in the attic and stuff. So we're pulling lines, and I'm leaving tomorrow. So these guys know they got to keep moving because they're going to be here without me tomorrow. So
Well,
crazy.
I saw you uncovered a dead rat that's been decomposing for a decade. That's nasty.
Yeah, my first cut. I opened up a little spot right above where the panel's going to be. And I looked on the ground, and I thought it was just like some drywall, and it was a decomposed rat.
Oh, man. Well, don't catch any new disease. Bring that stuff in, man. That's just crazy.
Yeah, man. I thought I had COVID, but I got COVID negative. I was coughing, but that wasn't from the rat.
Oh, it must have been the rat.
Yeah, the rat. Anyways, I just want to say hi to everybody. I can't even see the chat. I have no idea what people are saying, but I want to stop and say hi. Make sure you guys take care of FOMO and let him answer all your questions with Classy here. I'll be back on the 21st, so like the 23rd, if we have like a stream that week, I'll be happy to join in, and I'll see you guys after that.
All right. Thanks a lot for coming by, man. Hey, go take care of yourself. And if it's too heavy, you don't have to lift it. Hire someone to do it.
Yeah, exactly. I got some help. We're good here. All right, guys.
All right. That's awesome. Right. Thanks, buddy.
Take care. See you, class.
Bye-bye.
Later.
Okay. Hey, how are you doing, Classy? And it's special guest time today. So this is a surprise. I expected to get KG instead of get Classy. And KG is coming. Classy is coming by kind of to hold down the fort while we wait KG. And Classy wanted to share a preview, right, Classy, of the X85Js. For those of you who are on the fence and can't wait for a full review, Classy may have a little insight that may make a difference. So what do you have to share with us about your X85Js? What have you been watching, and what's happening with a Sony X85J?
Well, so first out of the box, I thought it actually was looking pretty good. I posted some pictures comparing it with the A80J, and the initial impressions were pretty good, especially for just being a basic, direct lit LED. Then I got into the gaming tests, and it has the same issue as the X900H, where at 120 hertz, it cuts the resolution in half. So instead of 3840 by 2160, it's 3840 by 1080. So that's a major issue in trying to recommend it as a gaming TV for anyone who wants HDMI 2.1.
So it's a 120 hertz native panel, but when you try to go 4K 120, that's when you hit the half resolution issue, which was the current issue with the X900H. That's never been fixed, right? No firmware update's going to help. And we don't expect it to, right? I mean, that's something that looks like accept it or get the X90J.
Yeah. So the X90J is the least expensive XR processor Sony HDMI 2.1 TV that has 4K 120 working. And there's been a lot of theories over the last year as to if Sony can fix it, how they can fix it, what the problem is. To me, all this evidence just points to, even if they did add extra hardware or daughter board or whatever,
oh my gosh,
apparently whatever they had to add is just not working with the X1 processor. So the X85J, the X91J, and the X90H or X900H, all of them with HDMI 2.1, all the X1 processor, they're all going to have this resolution being cut in half.
And as far as just watching normal stuff, what you've seen so far, nothing concerns you. I mean, it looks like a typical Sony. Anything that you want to throw in there as far as red flags?
Just the main thing to keep in mind with the direct lit TVs like that is, we've gotten accustomed to just max the brightness out and your black level is what the local dimming zones would bring it to. But when you have a backlit or a direct backlighting like that, if you increase the brightness, you're increasing your black level as well. So you have to find that balance of what's bright enough without raising your blacks too much. And so if you want the blacks darker, you drop the brightness, then you're losing some brightness. So it's that fitting it to your viewing environment.
You know, that's
balancing
a great segue to what we're going to talk about today, which are the other QLED TVs or LCD TVs with an LED backlight. And with that, oh, you have anything else to add for the Sony X85J? I didn't mean to cut you off. Anything else to add? Because I know you have a full review coming, right? So,
yeah, just that I would say, you know, compared to the 90J, the 90J is maybe 100 nits brighter, 150, something like that. It's really not noticeable. It's a small difference in most content. So if blooming really bothers you, then the X85J could be good for TV and movies. But you know, you won't have any parts of the screen getting pure black, but the zones on the 90J are so big, it's rare that you would on that as well. So
and
it's,
you know, with that, I think that's a great segue to both the TCL 6 series and U7G, because your observations apply definitely to the U7G. The 6 series remains to be seen. So let's jump into that. The new 6 series for 2021 is now called the R646. And this morning, literally, it was $1,500, right? $1,499. And then I reached out to my contact at TCL. Hey guys, you know, are you guys gonna have any review models, whatever? And by the way, $1,500, it better be a good TV. Literally hours later, it's $1,300. So I guess either it was a placeholder or it didn't intend to be $1,500, which to all of us is quite surprising how high it is. Regardless, at $1,300 though, this is pretty much where the current 6 series is. So I'm sure they'll discount the R635 a bit, but before this was released, it was at $1,300. So what are your thoughts, Classy, about the pricing of TCL kind of creeping up a little bit on us here?
I think everything's increasing this year. And I think they're all trying to just learn what's acceptable, what people are going to buy at, especially with the whole pandemic and people having more, you know, buying more stuff for in-home use. And it just seems like I would definitely wager that the average purchase price of a TV has gone up this year. So I think they're just trying to find their new value that they can hit. I personally am really interested in that TCL. I'm definitely going to get it as soon as it's available to try it out, because if it actually has full working gaming features, what really I like the most is it's the only one that separates the eARC from the HDMI 2.1.
That little convenience might be the game changer. So if you look at the pricing here, it's not available on Amazon. I did a search, but it's on Best Buy right now for $12.99. So you could pre-order. I think you could click on, well, it'll say what, not available yet or something like that. But at any time now, it could be available. So keep an eye out for that in the Best Buy. So let's look at the competition though, right? So you have X90J, exactly the same price, $1,300. So can't wait to get your take on which you would go for once you get that for testing. And then we have the U8G, just a little bit cheaper. And then the U7G, about $300 cheaper. And I think this is where the U7G may make a case for itself, short of the gaming features that you mentioned, which is a separate HDMI 2.1, and then eARC is separate. So you technically have two available to you. You could plug in soundbar AVR to the eARC, and then have HDMI 2.1 available for your Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5, right? Whereas right now you need a splitter for either the Sony or the Samsung or the older TCLs. Well, actually, the older TCL doesn't even have 2.1, or the Hisense, right? So that's kind of cool. And I guess the question is, well, I believe that TCL has access to the latest system on a chip, the SoC, so they're able to do that. My prediction is they got early access, and then maybe all the TVs in 2022 will get the same chip, and we're going to start seeing the separate eARC from the HDMI 2.1. That's my guess. But given the pricing, what would compel you to choose the Google TV version of the 6 series for $1,300, or Sony's X90J, also $1,300 with Google TV? I mean, the two are almost like spitting images of each other in terms of pricing and features, right?
Yeah, I think like this is kind of a repeat of last year with the 635 and the 900H, except last year we thought the 900H was 4K 120 hertz and the TCL was 1440 120 hertz, but it had the THX game mode, and I don't know, like I never saw last year's TCL, but I know from the reviews it's black handling or near black wasn't the greatest. A lot of detail crushed out. So I want to see if they fix that, and if the 4K 120 VRR, all of that works appropriately. If it has working Dolby Vision game mode, that could be really big for them. The THX game mode could be interesting. So I think the TCL might have all these extra value things that Sony's just missing, on top of having more zones. But the Sony's likely going to be more accurate out of the box, better colors. So it's definitely an interesting comparison.
The big thing that I think you're going to notice most about the TCL, if it shares the same vulnerabilities and flaws of last year's TCL, is the blooming. The mini LED gets extraordinarily bright, but they were unable to control the light leakage between the zones or the mini LEDs. And if they address that this year, that would be great. And if they don't, it'll be very similar to last year. And they may have, because this goes to what you were talking earlier. I'm beginning to wonder if getting more than 200 dimming zones is necessary or not, because I know the U7G has significantly less dimming zones, about 1/3 the dimming zones of the U8G. And so I wanted to know, hey, it's $300 cheaper. And gaming aside, let's just talk about what most people use it for: streaming, movies, and stuff like that, because gaming is definitely a moving target this year. So I wanted to compare, before I tell you which TV is which, right? This is 3 TVs. One of them is the U7G, one is the U8G, and the third one is, of course, my reference LCD TV, the QN90A. And all of them were set to maximum brightness, most color accurate mode, HDR theater mode for the 2 Hisense TVs, and on the QN90A filmmaker mode, everyone's max brightness. That way, gave me a sense if they pushed the EOTF too high, and they were all spot on. Actually, I was pretty impressed. None of them ended up being brighter than the other, with occasional specular highlight possibly being a little brighter, but I was very shocked, spot on. So here's the thing. Without telling you guys which is which, this one right here on the bottom left corner is a touch more saturated. However, this one is not calibrated. One of these 2 TVs is calibrated, and what shocked me was the other one looks so similar to the calibrated one. And so I think I may have given the hint away, but if you guys haven't guessed already, the top one, the top left, is the QN90A. Right below that, I
can tell by the white.
You can, right? Yeah, the white is more whiter, right? And then the U8G is below that, a touch more saturated, and the U7G is right here. Now, neither of these Hisense have been calibrated just straight out of the box. And I have to say, I'm pretty impressed with what they did on the color side. Okay, so brightness. And I didn't adjust the TV's brightness at all, but you can see already the brightness is a match. But amazingly, obviously, Samsung, black bars. I mean, this is why you're paying money on the Samsung. This is exactly what I see. It's like, dang, they kept the black bars solid black, no leakage. Now, with the Hisense U8G, you're seeing some light leakage, right? And this goes to what you're saying, Classy, which is the U7G, it's evenly lifted, no hot spots. The U8G, it's unable to control that leakage. I'm like, wait a minute, you have more dimming zones. What's happening here? So I'm going to have a long talk with Hisense about this. They figured it out here, and it has 1/3 the dimming zone. So for all you guys out there, and I'm at fault as well, I was under the impression that more dimming zones is always better. But in this case, we know that Samsung is setting the standard for black bar control. So let's leave them out of the equation, for twice as much they should. But U7G is not less bright than the U8G, assuming you're using, very accurate colors and reference. This is the Greatest Showman, and they have great specular highlights that get close to 1,000 nits. And right here, the U7G is not any less bright. And that's something that many people don't realize. The U7G on numbers and measurements may appear to lose on a couple hundred nits, but in real content, all 3 really are identical, with the exception of the black bars. So this is a sneak peek at my review. So for those of you who are on the live stream, ask away. I've only watched content, haven't done any gaming yet, but I have to say the U7G is impressing me greatly. And this is shadow detail. And now I know how you feel, Classy, about the QN90. If you notice, again, the QN90A, I've been impressed by shadow detail, of course. U8G, the reason why it has such great contrast, it does crush this out. I had to look twice, but the U7G, dude, what is this? Shadow detail, perfect with the QN90A. I cannot even see this. So I took off the camera. I did it many times, changed this and that. At the end of the day, this is crushed because you notice the bright areas are very similar. It's that shadow detail you're losing. And again, hot spots right here on the U8G, evenly gray, slight, and of course, Samsung. This is what you're paying, right? I have to say, this black bar is just dang, right? This is why they say it's near OLED-like. Shadow detail on the QN90A, plus black bars, plus the peak brightness that's a match. Really good. Not perfect, but dang, this is, I'm telling you, the U7G is impressing me greatly for $1,000. I honestly think it's the H9G repackaged as the U7G. I have to think that because I'm just so impressed. Okay, and here we have more shadow crushing. I have to show you guys, right? So if you look at the detail on her jacket, fine white threads, nothing. And again, take the camera off. I looked and it goes, yep, it's not there. It's not my camera. I don't see. I mean, I could, but I have to look closely. Here, it's very obvious. Now, everything looks great. I mean, you take a step back. It looks phenomenal, but you're losing a little bit of color detail here on the U8G. So I got to call them up on that. And as you can see on this one, I had to reduce my exposure a bit. So that's why it looks like you have great black bars. But it's also because you don't have the brightest areas on the edges. So it looks fine in these scenes, right, as well. Now, let's talk about blooming. So this is one that is exactly what we're talking about. So I push play right here, right? This is moving along, and I'm going to increase the exposure. You guys can see. Okay, once more time. Right there. Okay, as you can see right here, the U7G is evenly, slightly lifted across the board, whereas the QN90 and U8G, it gets a touch brighter, but then you have these blooming artifacts that's not on the U7G. And this is what you're talking about, right, Classy? Is it's treating it like, you know what? Well, why don't I lift a little bit of the blacks across the board, but avoid the blooming artifacts of the QN90 and the U8G? Again, all three are on max brightness, right? And again, I turned up the exposure a touch so you could see it. Normally, it's not this obvious. So a lot of you guys say, oh my gosh, the QN90A is crap. I turned up the exposure, guys, so you can see what the local dimming is doing. All three of them are actually pretty good. It's a deeper black, but for you guys to see what the local dimming is, I raised the exposure. This is evenly, slightly lifted. This, you have darker areas, but then right where the first wheel is, definitely the local dimming, it just can't keep it under control, whereas this is evenly lifted. So for those of you who hate blooming, I think the U7G hits the compromise. It hits the spot. It's a great alternative to the X85J because it is a 4K 120 native panel, and its peak brightness does match the U8G in most areas. So, but are you seeing similar compromises being made on the TVs you're seeing with the QNED90? Because that's now I know what you're talking about, the QNED90.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say with the QNED. It has all these zones. All that's doing is making the blooming take up less screen area, but it's very bright blooming. Whereas, like, even last year, the X900H that I had, I almost never had an issue with blooming on it with its 32 zones on an 85-inch because its algorithm was just better. Like, it would just lift everything, and there would be blooming, but it would be widespread out, and it wouldn't be as bright, so therefore it wouldn't be as noticeable. That's why I think the X95J might still have a chance for being one of the better LCDs this year if it's priced right and if they have the algorithm right. Because going from the 900H to the 90J, even though they're the same zones, I actually liked the blooming control on last year's better than the 90J this year, because the 90J this year was trying to do like a smaller blooming area, but then it was making it brighter, more noticeable. Whereas if it's a more spread out area, then it's not as noticeable.
And that's a great point. Oh, and thank you, Mikias Gami. I love my audience as well. So no FOMO for you. And this is why we do these reviews, is to let you guys know, look, there's always a compromise. If you know what you're getting into, there's no FOMO because there's no perfect screen, right? And so going back to the one above, what we're talking about is that blooming control. I think what a lot of TV companies are trying to do is to get this peak brightness that we see right here, an extra 100 nits. Number one, not too noticeable, but what does it do? You're adding blooming. Whereas here, it may be 100 nits less, but it doesn't take away from the viewing experience. And so you and I know that 100 nits, when you're at 900 nits, 900 to 1,000, guys, that's not noticeable. It looks great on ratings and all the other review sites, but when you look at real content, I think the blooming, if it goes out of control, that ends up being the deal killer for many people. So it's something for you guys to keep in mind. And I just wanted to also show the Specular highlights, because this is a segue to something that the QN90A, knowingly, they accepted this compromise in order to do what they do. So we're setting up this way. The QN90A, again, the Specular highlights, not quite as bright, as detailed as the U8G and the U7G, and both of these spot on identical. The U8G is not brighter. The U7G and the Specular highlights are definitely not brighter. Hey, KG, welcome, man.
Hey,
and the
how's it going?
QN90A, definitely a step down, right? Okay, so let's go
Except
to...
the faces on the characters on the sides. I can see the faces on the QN90A, not the other two. At least not very well.
Shadow detail, right. And yeah, that's absolutely right. The shadow detail, the U8G does crush shadow detail a bit. And I know KG is going to have some words for the U8G because you spent some time with it, a lot of time with it recently, right? And this is where I think, for me, the QN90A's choice of technology is, or may be, a compromise many of you might not want, which is this. So in order to get their wide viewing angle, what they did, if you look at her diamond, the diamond detail here, and the earrings, bright, but I lose so much detail. I lose contrast. I lose the individual black outline of the diamonds on the U8G and on the U7G. I can count the diamonds. On the QN90, the diamonds are literally merged together, and that black line separating the individual diamonds almost gone the QN90, so it looks like a giant bright ring. Earring. And here you can really see it, right? Even on the live stream, I'm hoping you guys can catch it. Much better contrast. You're seeing the black lines, the fine detail on the U8G and on the U7G, not on the QN90A. But this is a compromise they're willing to live with, because this is about 45 degrees off angle. This color is very close to on angle, and look at what happens here. So this is why I know why Samsung did what it did. Blooming, washed out colors. Okay, straight on, both of these slightly better contrast, better bright light detail, but colors, I mean, total color shift here and washed out color here. You're losing color volume. You maintain so much in the QN90A. So going back, are you willing to give up a little bit of this fine detail in order to have this? And at the end of the day, if you know the compromise, okay. If you never go off angle, it may not be an issue. The U7G ends up being a great choice, but notice suddenly the blacks are even more lifted than before, right? Colors are washed out. U8G, I can see them trying to do something, but that still doesn't end up being very accurate. So, but what are your thoughts on off-angle viewing, guys? I mean, is it a deal breaker for you guys? Because I see what Samsung is doing here, but I didn't know if it was something that was important to you.
So I think that, like, off-angle blooming and off-angle viewing in general, it's going to be a case-by-case basis. Like, if you're watching a lot of football with family members, that could be a problem, you know, or any movies with family members, that could be a problem. And I definitely think in the right household, you may need like, a lot of people will just watch TV with like one other person, you know, or just by themselves, and it'll be straight on most of the time. So it really is a case-by-case basis. And you're right, the Hisense TVs are really just not good off angle at all. They have this like yellow, like tint, yellow shift to it, and it's just the color just totally inverts, and it just looks really weird. So it just depends on the household, I think.
And that's something that a lot of reviewers don't notice, because you don't watch off angle, and you really have to emphasize that too. And I want to address Corey Hawkins. It is blurrier, so it's not even my camera. If you look at the Samsung, and you have the QN90A, if you compare head to head with the U8G, you'll notice that you're losing a lot of fine detail, and you can see it from 7 feet away. compared to the U8G and the U7G because Samsung's ultra-wide viewing angle raises the color saturation across all angles, but you definitely lose resolution. This is why it kind of pissed me off last year. On an 8K TV, what was the whole point of 8K if you lose a little resolution? On 4K, okay, whatever, right? But on 8K, it reduces it to lower than 4K now. And this is something that a lot of Samsung 8K TV buyers need to understand. If you're getting that ultra-wide viewing angle, you're going to lose the resolution. What's the point? Stick with the 4K. So that's kind of, until Samsung improves that off-angle viewing technology, they're pulling back resolution on 8K QN90A. If this is continues to be what's happening, because my last year's Q900TS 8K had this exact same problem. Off-angle viewing, great. Lost detail. Blurrier, yes.
Yeah.
It was also looking to me like because the Samsung, you can't turn off dynamic tone mapping. So that last image, I think all that extra brightness and loss of details because of that.
Yeah.
It could be.
Does the Hisense let you turn off dynamic tone mapping?
They don't have, well, they have enhanced contrast that you could turn off, but it doesn't do much. So I think Samsung, LG, and Sony, they've really worked on it. You can tell, right? On Samsung, it just looks like the colors are a little bit brighter. It's almost a brute force. I never turn it on because it's not even subtle. So, but you could turn it off. Yeah.
And then, so did you see about the Samsung's OLED, QD OLED on their website?
Oh, they put it on their website. I missed that. I know that people have been leaking out from Korea recently. So what was on their website? I missed that completely.
Just like it's not the actual TV. It's just like a pre-product whatever, and it says like this comparison of a conventional TV at 3,000 nits versus this at 1,000 nits, but their conventional TV is actually 15 to 1,800 nits, not 3,000. So they're gonna be under 1,000 nits, probably 500, 600, 700, but they're gonna push more color supposedly. So the colors could be brighter, but the bright highlights not as bright. So that should be 4K.
We all know that they're spending a lot of time creating special content that shows off this additional color volume and wider color gamut. So I cannot wait to get access to that sample color content to see, okay, can we notice this? Because if you look at the map, right, the color gamut map, it's a lot of greens, deep purples. It's colors that, unless you're watching Pixar, I don't know if it makes a difference at all. Because honestly, DCI-P3 captures most of what we need for an impressive movie watching experience. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see Samsung try to talk its way that this is a better experience for sure. I can't wait.
It looks like
that.
They're just going to call it QD display.
Yeah. Avoid the word OLED altogether.
Yep.
That makes sense.
And for those who are wondering about the U7G, on the fence, whatnot, so I can give you some rough conclusions. I'm going to have a more detailed review coming up, but this is give you guys, if you need to buy now, right? So the U7G versus the best. And when I say the best, I'm talking about other LCD TVs. We're not comparing to OLED, not fair and not appropriate. And it's a lot more expensive. So U7G is about $1,000 versus the best, QN90A or U8G. So the U7G does have lifted blacks, but it will have less blooming, less obvious blooming, and the brightness is similar. So what a lot of people are, well, they're annoyed by the blooming, right? Faces look a little bit too bright in the dark. The U7G will do a better job than the U8G controlling that. And it has excellent HDR specular highlights. Same excellence as the U8G. It is a touch lower contrast, but that's because it's not crushing the black. So I have to say the U8G looked amazing to me because, well, it's kind of cheated a little bit, right? It'll go for a little bit inaccurate so that it can crush the blacks a touch, but it wins the native contrast wars. And I know that's how it's winning it. Now, I see that. Whereas the QN90A and the U7G crush the blacks less, but then it appears that slightly worse contrast. So U8G works for a lot of people because it pops. But then for $300 more, it's something you guys are gonna have to think about. So there's no black crushing, and out of the box color, I was absolutely amazed. It was spot on with the QN90, except and you notice this classy, the whites were a little off, which is fine, right? It's out of the box. It was not as bad as the H9F I had two and a half years ago. That was bad out of the box. So thank you, Hisense, for taking the approach of, or maybe I just got a good one, because I was sent this TV by Hisense. Keep in mind. So yeah, if a lot of you are skeptical, maybe he got the golden model, maybe, but out of the box, it looks pretty good to me. Never know.
I got the total opposite of the golden model. So
oh yeah, wait, you got the on your U8G or U7G?
On my U8G. I didn't get a U7G.
And my U8G was not calibrated either. So yeah, it was definitely off. You guys saw how oversaturated it was, right?
Yeah. Now, I bought mine from Best Buy. So
what did I get mine? Oh wait, no, you know what? Mine was sent from the company. Yeah. And so that's why I thought, okay, well, if it's sent from the company, it looked like this. I'm sure they didn't do anything to it because it's clearly it needed help. And
I don't know.
And I guess both of those, they're letting me hold on to it until the X95J comes, hopefully. And if not, I'll have to send it back. But the only con for me so far for just streaming, we're not talking gaming, really is the bad off-angle viewing. If you're going to be sitting, let's say 30 degrees off angle, you're going to notice washed out colors, and you're going to notice more blooming. And that's just, it is what it is, right? It's $1,000. Accept that compromise, sit in front of the TV, and you have a banging TV. But if you do sit off angle, nothing beats the QN90A. It's just so good, even with all my complaints about the blurriness, this and that, right? But it chose its battle, and I think it chose appropriately. But what are you guys now about your favorite LCD TVs that you've seen? Because you've all seen Sony's and Hisense, TCLs, and Samsungs. What are your conclusions now? We're getting close to fall. Sales are starting to hit hard. What are your current impressions now, or any changes? You change your mind on anything?
Man, I have to see more. I got to see the TCL now. So I'm going to finish up the X85, and then I was going to do the U7 or the Samsung QN90A. All coming in. The Q70A, but I don't know. Should I get the Q70A to compare with the X85 first, and then get the TCL, or just get the TCL? Because that's probably a little more important. But I want to see those. And then I just realized I lost my Bluetooth because of that call, so I don't know if you can even hear me.
I can hear you. You're still on, buddy.
Okay. All right. But I don't know. Like the QNED was nice for its detail, but it's overpriced and it doesn't perform as well as we expected. The X95J, I think, still has a chance to be pretty good. The QN90A is going to be the best LCD this year, and I don't think that's going to change. And I don't the Hisense stuff I still need to see, but I think it's pretty well covered at this point. So I think on your high end you have your QN90A, in your mid level, below that you have the X95J and the QNED 90, and then just below that the X90, possibly the TCL somewhere in there. And then the Hisenses as the budget options. Other than that, for at least if you're concerned with HDMI 2.1 and having better performance, I think that pretty much covers it. And then it's looking like the Q70A is probably going to beat the X85J, at least for gaming, because of the X85J not really being a gaming TV now.
That's a great point about the Q70A being the budget gaming choice, because we were hoping the X85J would take that spot. So X90J, but then below the X90J, you have the Q70A, right? That's where your next affordable gaming TV is located. Or is it the same price as the X95 or X90J?
It was on sale for like $900 and for 65 inches, or 555. I forget. It was like $900, and then it went up to like 1,100. Or it keeps bouncing around. It's just, I think the 70 series, especially Black Friday, is one of the ones that gets cut a lot. So I think that's like, if you're looking for a budget gaming TV, wait for Black Friday, and then that could be a good option.
Yep. And so I'll make sure come fall, I'll add the Q70A, because now it has a place. Because before, I couldn't find a place for anything below the QN90A, only because they have so many compromises. But the Q70, it's a direct lit. Is it a direct lit?
It's an edge lit VA.
Edge lit.
Ratings says native contrast is like 7,000, so really good.
Okay.
For that.
That's promising.
Yeah, and 120 hertz. So.
Okay. So given that the price is in this ballpark, so I have here currently right between 1,300 and 1,000. I think this fits many people's premium TV budget for a 65-inch, right? If you go below the U7G, you get the X85 or X80, which is a huge compromise in my opinion, given what issues we've seen in terms of picture quality. But you get Google TV. So a lot of people don't like Hisense's Android because not all the streaming apps are on it. It's touch and go. And then on the higher end, now we have the 6 series, Google TV 6 series. So we complain about Roku for the elderly, right? So TCL quickly addressed that. And now we have Google TV at a similar price. Now, here's what I'm thinking about the new TCL. If it is receiving the same update as the 8K that Caleb loved so much on Digital Trends, this ends up being a winner TV because we know that the 8K looks great, not because of 8K, but because of all the improvements, right? Local dimming is better. All of that's better. You put that on a 4K, man, this could be the best TV. So yeah, I can't wait until that becomes available. And then we can compare that. What was that, KG?
Are they going to do that? Like, are they planning on updating the 6 series this year for the 4K
This is it.
model?
This is the upgraded,
Okay.
the 646. It just was launched today. So on Best Buy, it will show the R646. So we all assume that this is the new dimming zone algorithm that's being used by the 8K R648. Assuming, right, if that's the case, I think this is going to be pretty knockout. But value. So I think this goes to another question. Before, when I see the 6 years, I'm thinking I'm going to save at least $300, right? I was hoping this would be where the U7G is, but mini LED isn't cheap. So it goes to the question, would they have been $1,000 without the mini LED? I mean, you guys are seeing with and without mini LED. What are your conclusions now about mini LED? Because I'm getting a sense that doesn't really add much other than efficiency, consumption, right? We saw that, but what are your conclusions about mini LED now?
I think the X95J will have better blooming control than the TCL.
Nice.
Even with 60 zones. That's
there
my prediction right now.
All right.
I think the algorithm and the processor is just going to be that much better.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I got to get going here in a minute.
We'll go. Thanks, buddy, for dropping by, man.
I just wanted to also point out the X90J, I think at 65 inches is in trouble, but at 75, it's at 1850 now.
Yes.
That's not too bad.
Yes.
So I think the size really matters too when picking out which model's better. And then coming up soon, we should fit in our discussion about calibration and like what's accurate and how accurate might not actually be accurate.
I can't wait for that.
Yeah. So maybe next time.
All right, we'll talk about that. Yeah, the source, is it calibrated to the same weight point as the TV? And what if it isn't, right?
Yeah, and even Gamma, there's different. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, we'll talk about
next time.
All right, thanks, buddy. Drive safe. Don't get caught not looking.
Yeah.
And the road
I've been sitting here in a parking lot, so I was gonna keep going.
Later,
okay,
man.
bye, buddy.
See ya. Have a good one.
So, how are you, KG? What have you been up to, man?
Hey, man, just been working. Just
I gotcha.
Working on content.
And well, U8G. I'm anxious to hear, because we've been coming back and forth off air, and you've been finding a few flaws. Yep. It's not perfect, obviously. What is the one thing that has disappointed you the most about the U8G? Because people need to remember that these are all budget TVs. These are not the best of the best. So to make it sound like it is a bit unrealistic.
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't really impressed with the gaming too much. For the price, though, it's not that bad. Like I'm unfairly. Honestly, I am unfairly comparing it to the QN90A, right? Just because that's what everybody asked me to compare it to. Like, tell me how it is compared to the QN90A, because I want to save a bunch of money and get, a better TV somehow. And I don't think that's possible. You're going to get somewhat close to a QN90A, but in gaming, it's not even close. Like, it's not even close. Like, the picture quality just can't match up. And I compared it, like, I had it side by side to the Q90T. I'm not going to do a comparison video of that, but I did have it there briefly when I set it up. I compared it. I had showed some video of it side by side just to like demonstrate the ghosting and stuff, but like it's not even just about the ghosting because that's apparently fixed now. I haven't had a chance to even try that, but it picture quality wise, it's just not on the same level. The highlights don't pop out as much as they do in regular TV as they, in gaming. I don't see it like in regular TV. You can see some really good highlights for the U8G, and there's no doubt about that. I just don't see it. And then the processing is not on the same level as the bigger companies yet. It's just
Right,
not there.
right.
I see a lot of hiccups and glitches from time to time that make me go like, what just happened? Like, the motion will like sometimes skip, and it's just a lot of it just doesn't feel like it's quite in place. It's a good work in progress though. Like Hisense is definitely working towards becoming a really good TV, and I see that because I seen a little bit of the TV from last year, the H series, and that was pretty impressive for its price tag. So for its price tag, yes, it's pretty good, but it don't go expecting like the flagship stuff. Like
Right.
that I just try to temper people's expectations because there's a lot of super positive reviews on it, and like I didn't get a great unit, so I have to be truthful about me not getting a great unit. And I do tell people like, look, maybe I got unlucky, so
Right.
keep that in mind. You know, maybe I just got a really bad unit. So I don't know. I'm willing to give them another chance though. I just I gotta see more from the processing side of things. So I'm hoping the dual cell can like blow me away.
Well, you bring up some good points for sure.
Yeah.
And maybe we could apply some of your insights to Yojitsu's question. What 85-inch TV that's used for streaming, gaming, and sports would you buy with a $2,500 budget? So if you missed our earlier discussion with Classy about maybe 15, 20 minutes ago, what we're concluding is the minimum budget TV that has decent gaming with streaming, sports, whatever, right? But if gaming is important, you're going to end up looking probably at the Q70A. 85-inch ends up being 2,800. So at 2,800 bucks, so let's put up real quick right here, and we can talk about that.
Which one is it?
Oh, here, let me show you. It's this one. Here we go. Okay, so I know you said 2,500, so wait for Black Friday, right? That's always the mantra. But so the Q70A, it does have 4K 120 working well. If you go with the X85J, which is 2,500, its 4K 120 does not work well, meaning that it's blurry. It's not the full 4K resolution. You get 120, but it's using last year's chip. Last year's chip does not properly do 4K 120, and it doesn't even have VRR. With the Q70A, you get 4K 120 and VRR. So for 2,500 bucks, and good latency, by the way, right? And the image quality is fine. So it's edge lit. So that's something that you're going to have to look at. I know that Classy is going to bring it in for comparison, but now that you're on a budget, it's more important to look at the features, which is 4K 120 VRR, which this TV does have. And, well, the reviewers, the consumers love it on Best Buy site. Now, it is a bit above your budget, so hold on. Don't buy it now. Black Friday, I suspect it'll get closer to 2,500. So that's something to think about. But do you have a better choice in mind at the 85-inch size, KG?
It's hard to say. Like, this is actually not that bad of a TV.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't edgelit, like that might actually help it in this case because it's more of a budget TV. Like,
Right.
if you go with the lower dimming zones on the VA panels, or sorry, on the full array, like you start to see more blooming, right? And you'll notice that because you're expecting deeper blacks because you have full array, but you have, edgelit. It's not going to be like as prominent. You're not expecting like super deep blacks. But to be honest with you, the Q7FN, that was edgelit and that had some pretty good black levels for what it was. And you only noticed it in certain scenes that was just like completely dark. You're like, okay, the blacks are just a little bit lifted there. But that's just the limits of the technology.
Right.
And to be honest with you, on full screen brightness and like on full screen, just like images, it's a fantastic picture quality. You can get good picture quality from edgelit. So if you guys want to see it, like go to your Costco or Best Buy and check it out. It actually pops and it stands out. So it's
That
just
makes
gonna
sense.
really, yeah. If it fits into your budget and you want an 85-inch TV for that price, it's hard to go against that for sure.
And Musketcher makes a good point. So all these TVs have different local dimming algorithms, and what works for one TV doesn't work for the next, and it's content specific. Definitely, everyone, play with your local dimming. If you're complaining about, let's say, too much blooming, or the blacks are too lifted, or it's too dark, or it's not bright enough, adjust the local dimming in your TV, and you'll see significant changes because each TV approaches it differently. For example, I was surprised to find that on this year's Samsung, if you go from high to standard, everything gets brighter, but then your blacks become slightly lifted. And that's standard. You would assume high means brighter, but it doesn't. High just means deeper blacks. The local dimmings are, I don't want to say crushing it, but they're more aggressive in putting down the lifted blacks. So definitely, yeah, play with your local dimming algorithm.
Yeah.
Now, do you have a TV you're saving up for? Because let's say you have a $3,000 budget like Jeffrey here. And are you looking to get a larger TV, KG? I forgot. What's your size limit right now?
Yeah. So I'm debating on if I'm going to get a larger TV or if I'm going to go for that G9 Neo. I don't know. I haven't decided yet.
The G9 Neo, that's a huge investment,
yeah,
and it's
I haven't
curved, so you're
decided
dedicated.
Yeah, I haven't decided yet. But let's say like I was just waiting. Yeah, I think for a bigger TV, you're thinking those are going to drop, right? Like they're most likely going to have some sort of price decrease, and if your budget is tight, and it maybe is worth waiting for a bigger TV. It's just for like the 55-inch, 65-inch sizes. Like the difference in prices on those is probably gonna be like maybe 100, 150 bucks.
Right.
But yeah, the bigger TVs have a chance to go a little bit like 300, maybe 400 if you're lucky. So
here's a great question from Brad Smith. We both have the QN90A. We think it's a great TV. Assuming the 6 series is an improvement over last year's 6 series, right? Let's say the blooming is more under control, black's a little bit deeper, right? Or it's not as crushed, more shadow detail. Okay. Is it worth $1,000 over the QN90A? And it's Google TV now, so we can't hold Roku against it if that was a reason not to get it. Does the 6 series with those incremental improvements, but they're there, with the Google TV, is the QN90A still worth an extra $1,000? So the 6 series is $1,300. QN90A is around $2,200 right now. What are your thoughts if it was your money?
If it's my money, it depends. I probably not. Like that's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money,
and you got to have like a huge jump in picture quality. It depends on what I need, what my features are. It all like really depends on the feature set of the TV. I guess in this case, I haven't actually seen what this 6 series looks like, so I can't say if it's worth it or not. But let's say they stack up, and maybe the 6 series is only like 20% less, like in terms of everything overall picture quality. I would definitely go with the 6 series then, and save money. Like, I'm a big proponent of, like, if you could save money and get a good TV, then do it. But like, don't compromise your picture quality in some aspect. Like, if you have a budget, like, stick with that budget. But don't just say, oh, I'm gonna go down in my budget just to save money if you're already set on spending that amount of money. So I don't know.
So you bring up a really good point. So let's talk about the compromise. Is it worth the extra $1,000? So we're gonna share this one more time, and right here. Okay, here to put this up.
And real quick, like, I think there's like a sweet spot in TVs right now. Like, you have your low tier, you have your mid tier, right? And then when you start to get into your 80, your Q80, QN90As, and your OLEDs and stuff, that's the big sweet spot in my opinion. Like, you start to get to that level, that's when the TV technology, you feel like you get your money's worth. When you buy in this like $1,000 to $1,500 tier, I feel like you might buy a TV that's not gonna feel like you got your money's worth, and you might have been better off buying in like the $500, $700 range. It's because you're almost gonna get a similar quality TV. So, and it is going to depend on the model and the sales and stuff, but you know what I'm saying, though? It's just like you have to cross this threshold in order to get the technology that you want, like HDMI 2.1. If you need that, you have to go past a certain level. So
let's collect. So this is exactly what we're talking about. Is it worth the extra $1,000? So let me summarize what that extra $1,000 gets you, and then you can decide. So off-angle viewing, right? So right here, both the U8G and the U7G, you can see this is the QN90A, dude. The color at 45 degrees, this is actually pretty good. I mean, I'm like,
Right.
what? I didn't do this experiment before because I didn't have a chance. I go, these three, I just walked over with my camera and I caught it. And like, wow, okay, but that's one, right? So if you're off angle, that definitely makes a difference. Or how about the, here we go, shadow detail, right? Sometimes it's crushed. If it's a U8G, you're going to get consistent shadow detail from the QN90A, but most importantly, look at that black bar.
Right.
Shadow detail,
that's a
black
huge thing
bar,
to
right?
me.
Now the U7G, it's even. I mean, the blooming is a little bit better controlled. It's kind of evenly lifted. This one's kind of like hot spotting right here and there.
That was my downside, really, and it wasn't fair to put that on the UAG like that.
No, obviously it's $1,000 cheaper, right?
Right. Yeah.
But
it's
is
such a
it
big
worth
deal.
$1,000?
Yeah.
And I think so. Now it goes back to the question: is it worth it for you? Because between the black bars, they're almost identical. The U7G and the QN90A, almost identical between the black bars. Yeah, a little crushing here. But let's say U7G, right? Look how close that is.
Yeah. If you're in a completely black room when you can get the curtains blacked out, completely dark, you just want to watch movies, of course, I think yes. Then in that case, it is worth the extra $1,000 because you want that inky black bar experience, and you don't want any light leakage. Like, look at the U8G, the way the light was just peeking up from that thing the kid was holding there, and that flashlight thing, and it's just that's so distracting. I was watching Loki like that, and I'm like, I see now why people get OLED. Like that just makes me say, I see why people get OLED.
Or they pay for the same price QN90A. I mean, you can't get around to paying $2,000. Either the OLED is $2,000, or last year's OLED a little bit cheaper, or you're paying for the best LCD TV, but you're still at $2,000. Where's the savings? There is none right now, right? Unless that 6 series does it.
So you say the UAG, what is that? $1,000 right now for a
it's a
1,300,
like $1,300 for the 64. Let me pull up the pricing real quick for you, so you can compare it here. This is where we're at right now. There we go. Okay, so this is where we're at.
Okay.
And Terrence, we'll get to your question real quick. So this is where we're at, right? So you see 1,300 6 series, 1,300 Hisense, and the UHG is 1,250, and then 1,000's U7G. I'd get the U7G at the 1,000 now, seeing this, and if I'm going to upgrade, then I might as well like go something much different, much higher, and pay an extra 800 because the 250. I don't know. Not having the U7G, I didn't think the U8G would be so close. It is a touch brighter, so to be fair, but that's in vivid mode. In accurate mode, the U7G gets as bright as the U8G in all the movie accurate modes. So that's something.
It sounds like how the Q80T was just like slightly dimmer than the well, not slightly, but it felt like it was slightly dimmer, even though the
with more lifted blacks
was there. The Q80T was a fantastic TV in comparison, so like if you found that at a good deal, you felt pretty good about it, and that's how I feel it's going to be like with the U7G and the U8G. It's like, if you don't like absolutely care that much about super bright images, like just get the U7G. It's
agreed
because it's so close, and the dimming zones, it's a little bit different, but for the most part, I would just save some money and get the U7G, especially if you're already in the budget range. I don't think you'll notice a huge difference. From everything that I'm hearing about the U7G, it seems pretty impressive and pretty close to what the U8G was. So,
I think the number one fear, and it's a valid fear, it's a Hisense brand. Is it going to last? All those things.
You get what you pay for.
You get what you pay for. Absolutely.
You just have to remember that going in. You're like, hey, I'm taking a chance. Because I'm saying
now, to be fair to Hisense, people have been saying the same thing about Samsung, and they're unhappy 3 years later, right?
Yes,
so you don't buy your way out of problems sometimes,
right?
After the warranty, So here, Terrence has a great question. A80J, this is everyone's favorite movie watching OLED, right? Wait till Black Friday. Yes, you should. The price on Black Friday will be cheaper because it's not a Master Series, so Sony is a bit more aggressive in discounting their non-Master Series TV. And this year, the A80J is so close to the Master Series. Honestly, unless you have the extra money laying around, I'd go with the A80J myself. If I wasn't reviewing TVs, I would tell everyone debating between the A90J and A80J, get the A80J, and with the money saved, get the Audio HTA9 from Sony. That would be an amazing package with the money you save. Yeah, a couple $100 more on top, right? But that's it. You're done. So yeah, and yes, it is perfect for old school streaming. Not a gaming TV, but for what you're saying, streaming in old school, dude. This is a keeper. You're gonna have this TV until it dims 8 years from now, 9 years from now.
Yeah, and that goes back to the point. It's like if you can wait. Like if you can't wait, don't wait. It's not worth waiting if you can't wait. Like if you need a TV and you're sitting there not watching a TV, or you're watching something that is just like on its last legs, just buy it now, because you're not gonna save that much.
Well, so that's exactly what we're talking about, right? Right now it's $2,300, and then Brad's saying if you went to Black Friday, you're saving $300. Question is $300 worth it? That's really, you're not saving like 50%. You're saving a few hundred, and if you're just on the edge, sure, wait, because it's a 2021 model. That means it's not going anywhere, right? There's enough in stock. But if you could pay $2,300 or $2,000, either way is fine. Get it now and enjoy it. Don't even think twice.
Let's see.
What is your current favorite TV? Okay, or wait, you're on the fence. Did you commit to what TV you want every time we talk? What is your TV for Black Friday?
I personally, like my personal TV, I am on the fence. But like if I had to recommend a TV, it's definitely going to depend on your use case. Because I don't think there's a perfect TV for just one person, like, so that's why I avoid saying like, this is the best TV, because in my opinion, the best TV that I've seen this year is the A90J. Like it's not close.
Yeah.
Like this thing can get so bright in the highlights, and it's almost LCD level in the brightness. So for an OLED to get that bright, that blew me away. That literally blew me away. And I still look at some of the comparison footage that I shot, and I can spot instances where, the white subpixel here on the A80J, definitely you can see it struggling a little bit there. So you can see where the ABL is kicking in on the A80J and it's not on the A90J. There's so many aspects that I can highlight with that on my, and I have hours and hours of video. Right. I can easily find like instances where, I can see it there. Will you see it like in person? Like if you're going and seeing an A80J and then 1 minute you go to the A90J, I don't know, probably not. But when you have an A90J in front of you, it just feels like the hot spots. Like when I say the hot spots, I mean like the real bright areas, and they appear bright. They just feel bright. It almost feels like it's directly shining a light at you. That's the best way I can describe it. The processor knows what needs to get bright, and it makes sure that is the brightest spot you see.
It's an extra level of immersion, or they call it like reality creation. It's that immersion of, wow, that looks real. And I think this goes to Ariel's question, because I lost a bit of that immersion with the QN90A. So he's asking, since the 950H and the X95J also have wide viewing angle filters like the QN90A, do they also suffer from blurriness and loss of resolution? So the problem with the 950H, and I don't have the 95J yet, but it lost a bit of contrast with its technology. So Sony and Samsung use different wide angle technologies. QN90A, Samsung's unique technology is at the pixel level, and the biggest complaint is that it's pixel level wide angle, and there's articles written about it. I think Flat Panels HD did an in-depth article. Like, dude, you're losing resolution at 8K when you do this, and they were not happy, right? So, but it works better than the Sony's for wide angle, but you lost resolution. Sony, I don't think either is technologically as advanced. However, it does help with wide angle. So when I get it, I'll look closely to see if I'm losing resolution, but you're losing contrast with a Sony for sure. I mean, not a lot. It's just something that people noticed, that when they went from the 950G, which is the 2018, 2019 model, to the 2020 model, the 950H, it lost a little bit of that contrast, native contrast and absolute contrast, right? So you're losing something with the wide angle because you're trying to apply a filter to see more colors at an angle, but then you're compromising your direct view. To what degree it is, it's a you're gonna have to decide.
Yeah.
And it makes me sad that QN90A, you're losing some of that fine detail. It kind of sucks. And Spillage, thanks for the super chat. Is the U6G, U7G, or U8G better than X900H from last year? I found the X900H to have lifted blacks. It can never get deep blacks. So the U7G and U8G are brighter and will have deeper blacks and have probably a little bit better blooming control. However, according to Classy, X900H won't have as bad of hotspot blooming. And I agree with him. I had the X900H for a while, and I just found I didn't find the blooming as annoying as the lifted blacks compared to the 900TS and the H9G. So for me, the X900H, the blacks were just a little bit too lifted. Now, the U6G is worse than the 900H, but I would choose this U7G before I chose the X900H. But then again, color accuracy and also out-of-the-box DSC, uniformity, Sony is known to have it more consistently. This is the first year where my Hisense out-of-the-box didn't have as bad vignetting as it did before. So maybe Hisense is locking down its quality control a little bit. But how about you? What are your thoughts about the X900H compared to the Hisense's current lineup?
So let's take the U6G out of this, because that's just like, that's your entry level. Like, I don't think that deserves to be next to the X900.
Yeah, no, I didn't even put it up because it was embarrassingly weak. Yeah,
right. And so like, I think I would probably get one of the Hisense TVs over X900H, just because I was not impressed with the X900H. And you're right, it does lift some blacks, and it's pretty noticeable. There's so many issues with it with gaming too, and I don't know how big of an issue that is for the person buying, but there's a lot of issues. The X1 processor, Classy pointed this out with the X85J. Is that what he said? The one that has X1?
Yes.
Yeah, he said
the X80 and X85 both have last year's processor, right?
Yeah. So the resolution at 120 hertz is cut in half. Like, no.
And
I don't think that's something I could ever recommend.
Yeah, for gaming especially, it bothers a lot of people. Hey, Bat, you may have just joined us. So we're referring to the loss of resolution in scenes like this. So real quick, what I was talking about is it's wide viewing angle technology where you have scenes, fine detail here, right? And the diamond rings. The QN90A consistently, although same brightness, I'm not getting the fine detail in these areas. And it doesn't matter how I adjust the various settings, right? Believe me, I've tried it all. And even with the best setting, I get more clarity in these fine details, right? So if you happen to have an OLED or another TV, check it out. Now, it's not a deal breaker for many people. I mean, unless you have the TVs next to each other, you're not going to notice, but I do. And I noticed that, and it's something that I noticed before, but this scene in particular really drives it home. But in return, what are we getting? This. You're getting this, right? Your wide viewing angle, you're preserving so much of that color. This is like about 45 degrees off angle, maybe a touch more. And for many people, me included, perfect blacks, even off angle, you're getting this color preservation. You're losing it. Everything is just gone here. So I think it's worth what Samsung did, but Samsung needs to know that we know what they're doing. Come on, let's fix that if you can next year. But I think they're walking away from LCD TVs anyway. I think they're going to hold, right? Because it's so good right now that they might just hold par, serve, and move forward with QD OLED.
I think that, like, I don't know what they did with the dimming algorithm. It's so different now. Even on the Q90T, like with the update that we just had, and just in game mode specifically, the highlights, the lower highlights, they don't get bright at all. Like, maybe I want to say maybe like at least cut in half, at least. And sometimes
you're talking about the specular highlights.
Yeah, yeah, even a little bit bigger than that too. So like, I would say like 10% window.
You mean this? The little, you see that? Even here, you can tell that it's slightly dimmer than these, right?
Somewhat, yeah.
Yeah,
see, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. Because for whatever reason, I think it has something to do with just keeping blooming down. But man, you can notice it so hard on these Samsung TVs now, and it feels like they're trying to get this dimming algorithm under control just to avoid blooming. But somewhere in their engineering department or whoever's working on this, they are just missing the mark on the highlights, because it wasn't like that. So whatever their dimming algorithm was at launch, and even a couple months
So you're talking
after
about the
launch,
Q90T. Q90T at launch.
Yep.
You felt that the specular highlights was brighter. It popped more. And now you're watching and you're like, wait.
Yeah.
To be fair, I found that was a problem with the 900 TS from launch. And that was one of the reasons why. I didn't notice it at first because I was watching a lot of SDR content made to be HDR. But as they put in more HDR content, I started to notice, wait, the specular highlights don't look as bright as my A9G. And we know the A9G is not a bright TV. And that's when I started looking into this. And yeah, Samsung, if you put it in vivid mode, oh, it's outrageously bright all around. But then you have lifted blacks. You take the lifted black out, you control the blooming, and then your specular highlights drop. And you end up with an SDR TV, essentially.
Yeah, and I think what they do is when you put on contrast enhancer, which I don't recommend doing, but
put on standard, right? Take local dimming to standard, and then some of it comes back. So
you can even put local dimming on low, and then you put like contrast enhancer on high. You'll notice for whatever reason the highlight details are like a lot better, but you're still getting a dimmer image. It's really weird looking. It's weird, to be honest with you.
You almost have to go into vivid mode or dynamic mode or something crazy.
Yeah, so I really like intelligent mode for the Samsung TVs right now. Something they're doing, and I definitely get the highlight detail when I'm in intelligent mode for regular TV and movies. Definitely don't use that if you're like caring about creators' intent, because it takes it to
XR chip. The XR chip also, it's not. It's, right.
Yeah,
a little bit of creative license. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about this a little bit more too, and like the AI in these TVs, I feel like maybe are underutilized or maybe even under talked about, like not talked about enough, because some of the stuff that it does, it's very impressive. So the Q90T, put it up next to a A90J in like movie mode. A90J is crushing it completely, like just destroying it with its colors, the color accuracy. You put it in intelligent mode, and the colors were very similar. And I was like, what? Why?
What?
I was confused. So like I have a video of this on my channel, and it's just like,
that's great.
I can't believe how close it got just by putting on intelligent mode, the AI mode. Like, I don't know. It goes to like what Sony is doing is a little bit directing away from the creator's intent, obviously. And then, is that okay? I think that's okay for a lot of people. For me personally, I don't mind it because it looks really good.
I'm going to address Cyber GT's question. Do you think MediaTek will release a new board for 2022? And we're talking HDMI 2.1. So wait or buy 2029 model and hope for an update, right? And MediaTek dropped a new firmware update for the JZ 1500. So looking forward to hearing what that did. So the reason why I'm bringing up the TCL, the R646, this is their 2021 update to the 6 series last year. So it's a mini LED. It has lots of improvements. The biggest improvement goes to your question, Cyber GT, which is the SoC on this TV separated the eARC from HDMI 2.1 ports 3 and 4, right? So suddenly we have a change. If this is MediaTek, I don't know if it is. If it is, that means TCL has access to the updated version that separates the eARC from the rest of the 2.1 ports. That's huge, because maybe it means they fixed the issues with VRR at 4K 120 that all the TVs are struggling with. So I don't think this is an easy software update that could separate the eARC, obviously. So the eARC limitation may be part of that problem with the SoC. Again, I'm assuming TCL is using the new MediaTek chip. I don't know if it is. I'm going to reach out to TCL to find out. But if it is, then I'd say wait for 2022, because having eARC share an HDMI 2.1 port, you literally have lost a 2.1 port if you're going to use a soundbar with eARC, or any ARC, right? A soundbar with ARC, and you're gone, because there's only one ARC port, eARC or not. Do you have issues with a shared port? What are your thoughts?
Oh yeah, I do. I think that just separate it if you can. Like, don't make us choose. Honestly,
Yeah.
like, well, look, I gotta give props. I gotta give big props to Vizio. They do not do this. They have two separate HDMI 2.1 ports, and their eARC port. It is what it is, right? So it's pretty good. I think that's the better compromise. If you can only get two ports on your TV that are HDMI 2.1, don't make it share with the ERC. You know?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So
And
that's how I feel about that.
hey, for the QN90A, everything is off, no noise reduction, nothing. So it's straight up with whatever is the most accurate mode without noise reduction. So if noise reduction on helps, let me know. I'll check that out. Okay. There was another good question here. Hey Joe, how much better do you think Samsung OLED will be? Better than the Sony A90J and the A80J. How much do you think the Samsung will cost? So there's a couple things to unpack. First of all, you have to remember this is literally Samsung's first generation quantum dot color converting layer in the front and first generation OLED backlight for stacked blue OLED. This is all new for them. There are so many points of failure here. I cannot even begin to talk about it. And they haven't had a chance to truly test it with consumers. But I can tell you this, up to this point, Samsung displays QD OLED implementation has continued to disappoint the early, I don't want to say reviewers, but the assessors, the evaluators to try to get this to market. They felt it was too dim. Right. So Samsung Display has been working very hard to raise the brightness level. So you have to remember that Sony A90J, A80J is using an LG Display OLED they've been working on for 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, however long it is. We're on 8th generation OLED manufacturing technology. You can't compare a polished, mature product with all of the kinks. I'd say this is about as mature as the LG OLEDs are going to get. This is about as bright as it's going to get. We know its limitations, and it's fabulous. We don't know what the limitations of the QD OLED is going to be. I mean, maybe in 8 years, it'll be amazing, but this is the first year. The first year, there is no way Samsung would have figured out all the issues, nor exploit all the awesomeness. And here's the worst part. The QD OLED, the OLED and QD OLED, this OLED is going to be maybe around for 2 or 3 years. It's already a dead technology. They're preparing QNED, which is QD, same color converting layer in the front, but instead of OLED as a backlight, they will be using nano rod / micro LED backlight blue backlight instead of OLED. So that's 3 or 4 years around the corner. So they have very little interest in spending time figuring out QD OLED. They just want to get out the door, get some press, and they're going to call it QD display. Right. And that's something to keep in mind. This is not an OLED TV per se. It's a QD display. And so how much will it cost?
I think
to be competitive, I'm thinking $5,000. It has to be $1,000 more than the A90J. So what are your thoughts on that?
So I think that it's smart. It seems like they're targeting 4K, right? It does seem like they're targeting 4K from what we've seen so far. And I think that if they can come in at a price like maybe $1,000 more than what the A90J was, they might have a market. Like they might have somebody that's willing to try this new technology out because there's a lot of exciting things about this technology to be excited about. You know, you have the, no white subpixel driving your colors. This is more just about you're getting that pure color, and what Samsung is known for is their colors. And if they can get that perfected, on a display that, let's say it's even just 500 nits, that's about what most OLEDs are on an average level,
right?
In HDR. So if it can look good and have the right color volume, and then especially if it can get to that 1,000 nits like they're claiming, then yeah, we're in business. They definitely have a market of people that would probably want a nice looking TV at that level. They can't price themselves out way too much, because if it is 4K and it's like, I don't know, $6,000-$7,000. Like nobody's gonna buy that.
So you bring up a good point
I shouldn't
about.
say nobody, but you know what I mean.
I think what we all need to be reminded is what's the threshold performance for this QD OLED or QD display. So the threshold performance is it has to be at least as bright as the current OLED. If current OLED, and we're going to be generous, is 800 peak brightness, A90J, 800 nits, or the G1, maybe 750, 850. So we're around there. Panasonic, 900 nits peak brightness in accurate content, right? We're not going crazy vivid. If the QD OLED cannot match that on the same movie, whether it's Aquaman or whatever, they got a big problem. So that's one. Number two, at least measured, it's got to have significantly more wider color gamut. Now, it'll win the measurement wars, right?
Yeah.
But whether you and I will notice the difference, because here's a lot of things you guys all have to remember. If a movie is only graded to PCI D3 85%, they're only going to show what is graded. They're not going to add more color that isn't there. So we're going to have to pull out, right? There are about 3 movies that specifically push the color gamut. Pixar's Inside Out is one, in the scene with a clown running around, right? So I'd measure, it has a bit more color.
You know,
but that's it.
Yeah, Samsung is claiming that it's 80% BT 2020, so we'll see. I mean,
we can have content to show it off.
Yeah, we'll
right?
see.
I mean, if I'm watching like a movie that's graded to 80%, it's going to show 80%. You can't add color that doesn't exist in the source content.
There's not that much BT 2020 out there.
It's like 8K. There's no 8K movies out there. Right. So what am I doing with this, right? So Samsung has got to have demo material that could show this off. And I think it comes down to brightness. It has to be brighter than current QD OLED. And we're talking not peak, because peak specular highlights is limited by the source. We're talking average picture level. In SDR, if I want to watch hockey blazing bright in a bar without the dimming, automatic dimming limiter kicking in, can I do it on the QD OLED? If I can't, why am I paying more? I'll just get a LG, whatever, C1, C2, G2, right?
Yeah.
Because it's that SDR average peak level. It's not average picture level on an OLED is a little bit dimmer. If Samsung could raise that in all content, now we're talking, because it's more like an LCD TV without the blooming issues.
Yeah, the Samsung's innovation in their marketing is just so top notch, though.
It's like, so good.
I'm not betting against them on that, on marketing it to anybody for sure. Like,
absolutely.
Because I'm excited for it, and I don't even like. I don't know. I don't have a lot of confidence in it, but I'm excited for it. So
I have to say, things like solar powered remote control, right? Little things that are just wow. This is a fancy TV. When you get
the box into a house, like
yes, right? Like what? So their marketing team is fully funded. You saw it in their CES remote, whatever, right? It's like wow,
really good.
That's high production value. And then you see Sony, like, dude, I feel so bad for Sony and their cut rate budget, right? So yeah, no, Samsung, I won't bet against them to get people excited, but for sure. Oh, lost KG, and as soon as we have him back, he will join us. Let's put this up real quick here. There we go. Aha. Okay, let's get some questions here. CyberGT has a question for us, or a comment. The 65 R646 is using AIPQ SoC Gen 2 engine. Thank you for that clarification. So here we are. Question is this their own vertically integrated SoC? And if it is, CyberGT, this is what we talked about and why TCL is awesome. They, like LG and Samsung, are vertically integrated. They own chip manufacturing companies. They own technology companies. TCL is a huge conglomerate like Samsung and LG. So if they dedicated resources to figure this out in-house, well, they're the only other guy in town then. So you have LG, Samsung, and now TCL playing this game. I'm looking forward to them selling this to other companies, because unlike LG and Samsung, TCL may spin off this solution and compete with MediaTek, if that's possible. So yeah, if it's not a MediaTek, if it's their own in-house, wow, that'd be great if others could access it. Definitely. Yeah. For sure.
So this is HDMI 2.1, right?
Yes, HDMI 2.1. 2 ports plus a separate EARC, and you don't have to go to Vizio for that now.
That's pretty impressive.
Yep. Yep. Oh, here's a great question. Jesus Munoz 100. Thank you for the question. Just purchased the 77-inch A80J with 4-year warranty and taxes for $32.10. Oh, that's actually a pretty good price. And I love it. My first OLED took me a while to decide. Thanks for all the help. This is what we're talking
Nice,
about.
yeah.
I think you and me, most
worth it.
people who's not gaming, dude, that 77-inch A80J is such a good TV for the price. I mean, 3,000 is not cheap, guys, but that's an end game TV. There should be no FOMO after buying that TV unless you're a gamer, but you know what you're going with, right? G1, you're done. But if you're just watching movies, oh, what a fabulous TV.
Yeah.
Great,
And
great,
can I
great.
just say, like, how awesome that is to read and hear about, like, somebody finding the perfect TV. Like, that's what makes it all worth it at the end of the day. That's what makes these streams worth it. That's what makes, like, the content that we make worth it. Like, when you can find somebody that's happy with their purchase and, like, we helped with that somehow, like, we had somehow a hand in that, like, to give us credit, which you shouldn't do, but
I know it's not hard to get people to buy the A80J, right? It's like the best.
But like, if you feel like we helped and you give us credit for that, thank you so much. Like, that means a lot, and it is definitely awesome to see somebody just get it right, and they're like, yeah, thank you, and,
Yeah,
so
no, you're welcome,
it
everyone.
does mean a lot. Yeah,
Come and ask us questions, because sometimes we take for granted how easy it is to make a decision.
And
Hey,
it's
should I
not.
get an
It's
OLED or
not.
not an OLED,
It's
right?
not easy.
Right, because I mean, here's the worst crime.
Yeah.
LG C10 right now, it's like 1850, whatever. And then you see this QNED or Neo QLED from Samsung that's $300 more. What is our assumption? Oh, it must be a better TV. It's $500 more. Every one of us to a man, short of anti-glare issues, I'm gonna say, well, why don't you get the LG C10, right? But if you're not familiar with the technology, you go with a more expensive TV because that's how life is for a lot of people.
Yeah,
the
and
more
like,
expensive item is just better.
right, and see, you can buy multiple TVs in a year,
Yes.
right? See, and then the thing is with that is, like, some people only buy one TV every 5 years. It makes the decision so hard. When you get to that point, like, you're just like, what do I do? And so you're definitely going to have a lot of content consuming, and then you have paralysis by analysis, and then you overthink things, and then you buy something, and then you have buyer's remorse, and then you have the FOMO, so then you got to stop the FOMO by going to stop the FOMO. So it's like, dang, man, there's such a big cycle of buying TVs, and it's stressful. So I definitely understand, like, and that is why we got to give it up to Brian Whisper Status for, like,
Tech therapy.
Tech therapy.
Yep,
It helps people
absolutely.
out with that too, and I try to do that too. And I'm like, you guys gotta just, like, once you figure it out, give it a chance. Don't go looking for problems all the time. Because my thing is, like, look, if you want to look for DSD, you're gonna find it. Like, if you want to look for vertical banding, you're gonna find it.
Absolutely.
It's just, if you're not seeing it in regular content, don't look for it.
So let's talk about this, because I think we segue into Andel's question right here, because I know you've been struggling with this. Hey, FOMO, for gaming, 4 to 6 hours a day. He's a gamer. Should I pick a QN90A versus the C1? I'm scared of burn-in. How long will the C1 last without burn-in? And both of the same price on Amazon 65-inch. We just talked about this. You have seen both. You have the QN90A. What would you do here?
If you're in a dark room, I would probably go C1. If you're not in a dark room, you just get a different level of brightness from the QN90A. It just depends on your use case. Like, leave burn-in out of it, honestly. Like, I would not be afraid of burn-in. And I know everybody says this, and it might seem like we're just trying to promote OLED, but it's not the case. Trust me. I had an OLED for 3-4 years, and I played the same game nonstop all the time. I never burned in the screen with a video game. I just haven't seen it. My
only contribution, because I agree, if it's a bright glaring room, then QN90A is the only one that cuts the glare with its anti-glare and it's super bright. But the C1, uniquely, of all the TVs for sale, the C1 and the G1, right? 4K 120, Dolby Vision, VRR. All works. That's it. So if you have a Series X and you're getting all excited about Dolby Vision gaming on 4K 120, you have no choice. You have to get either LG C1 or G1. But if you have a PS5, it opens up a lot more TVs, because PS5 doesn't have all these crazy awesome specs or whatever, right? So, and do you need more than one HDMI 2.1 port? Only the C1 has 4, and you could plug in all four or plug in three. It doesn't matter. The QN90A, you're gonna have to get a splitter, so something to keep in mind. But as far as picture quality, they both look phenomenal for everything. But well, gaming. What about the picture quality in gaming? Do you see a difference between OLED and the QN90A? I mean,
There's definitely a difference, and it's scene to scene.
okay,
You
game to
know,
game depends on the
it's
game.
game to game, scene to scene. It really does depend on a lot of things. Like if you look at the QN90A versus C1 video that I got up, and a lot of people love that video. Like I got like 200,000 views on that video, so thank you to everybody. But like this video is a good demonstration of what you can get with the OLED on the weakness side, and then what you can get on the brightness side with the QLED. But then on the same side of things, you can see the shadow detail isn't always going to be crushed out on the C1. It's actually pretty good for the most part compared to an LCD, because the LCD won't deliver the same amount of detail in the actual image. So like when I say shadow detail, sometimes I get this just confused with like actual detail, because there's so much detail in textures,
Yeah.
and like dark wood. Like if you look at like a dark wooden plank on the floor, you just see all the textures in it. But like on LCD, you don't see that.
Agreed.
Like, and there's just so much depth and just extra detail with an OLED in those kind of scenes that separate it for a lot of people. So it really just depends on the game, depends on what kind of games you play, what time of day you play. It's so much that goes into it. They're both fantastic though. Like I love them both. I thought they
Agreed.
were the best gaming TVs that I've seen this year. So
Irene has a great question. 85 or 86 inch for TV movie watching, some Wii gaming. Oh, that's the best question. Like, oh, I got a little Nintendo. What TV should I get for Nintendo game? Right? Almost any TV will do. So we're talking about movie watching TVs. So maybe over the air, maybe some cable. And I'll remind Brandon to get your HDMI cable. And believe us, we have more than enough of these things sitting around. So we'll make sure you get it, Irene. Don't forget, if you haven't emailed him already, let him know what your address is. And he's on vacation. So when he gets back, he'll get it to you. Okay. 85, 86 inch. This limits what TVs are out there. But the Sony X85J is a phenomenal TV, 85 inches. It's not a great gaming TV, as Classy has told us, but for just normal, regular viewing, it's wonderful. Yeah. And it's an 85-inch TV. So the X90J is one step up. It'll be a little bit brighter. But if your room is not super bright and not super glare, I'd go with the X85J because you'll have great motion. This is a 4K 120 hertz native panel. I mean, it's a great price too. So I don't know what your budget is. If your budget is like,
is that edge lit?
Sky's the limit. Yes. Oh no, it's direct lit. The X85J is direct lit, and so it has even lifted blacks. There's no blooming because there's no full array local dimming, but the blacks end up being okay, right? If there's no other TV next to it, I think this is fine for Irene. So keep an eye out on the X85J. It will be discounted heavily during the holidays or during Black Friday, so I'd recommend that. But again, if your budget is higher, well, maybe the X95J 85-inch now. I think that's probably like closer to above 3,000. So it definitely depends on your budget. Yeah. Okay.
I gotta wrap it up in like 5 minutes. So.
Yeah, let's wrap it up. Thank you, everyone.
Well, you don't have to, but I gotta go.
No, I'm wrapping it. You reminded me because I'm getting phone calls. Yeah, let's wrap it. Okay. Let's make this a 90-minute awesomeness here.
For sure.
We'll catch a couple more questions and then we'll wrap up. And there's another good question I wanted to hit. Here we go. What is the perfect OLED TV in terms of specs, color science, and panel feature? Oh, Mustafa, I love this question because it depends what your priorities are. Many people will argue that the LG and the Panasonic will give you the most accurate settings available to you so you can match the source exactly. Yeah. However, normal people who don't need that reference level of matching prefer the Sony just because it's more appealing. So it's very subjective. And Classy and many others have dug into this, and it's true. The Sony near black is not as accurate as LG or Panasonic's near black. But we're talking near black, we're talking that just above black, that's 1% to 2%. That's where the Sony falls behind, but everything else, the Sony is phenomenal. And even those that criticize that near black, they're still going to prefer the Sony. So it comes down to, if you are a professional and you need that because you're grading for a movie, yeah, get the LG or the Panasonic. But if you're watching for yourself, the Sony XR knows how to make it look good. So it depends on your priorities. But yeah, Sony is not the most accurate, which is kind of ironic, right? And so they've given it up. Like, you know what? Forget accuracy. We'll just go with what we think that people would like. But what are your thoughts on that? That's not exactly accurate. Do you think that's a deal breaker?
Yeah, I mean, like accurate color wise, it's pretty good out of the box. Like I don't know if they mean like just overall picture accuracy, but in terms of just what you can get with and how you can tweak the A80J and the A90J, man, it's so good. The reality creation is a definite like if you're not gaming, even if you are gaming, but if you're not gaming and you don't care about the extra ports, man, it's hard to go against the Sony OLED for that kind of thing. It's so beautiful. Like, and the reality creation.
Yep.
I'm gonna cover this in a video, and just, it's so good. The amount of detail that you can bring out with the reality creation is pretty impressive. And you can go as far as super unrealistic, ultra vivid mode, or you can go just just a little bit more detail enhancement. It's so controllable. I think for more of a casual viewer, it's probably going to be the better buy in terms of just like out of the box,
Agreed.
And then
out of the box
C1,
accuracy is something people forget. Is a lot of these TVs, it's definitely a lottery. Sometimes you get a good one. Sometimes, like, what the heck? Everything's pink, and then you got to bring in a calibrated. Sony consistently looks good out of the box, and that has to be mentioned. But
like
let's address that.
Look at all the ratings, reviews and stuff. Like they're always on par for like when they're talking about out of the box accuracy. It's always Sony TVs that are up there. So they definitely are doing their thing with the color accuracy out of the box.
Speaking of Sony, just a quick reminder, everyone, we're going to wrap it up with a couple more questions. And if you have questions that remains to be answered, come on back. And so, Van, any reviews soon for the X95J? Thank you for the super chat. It's in stock at ABT Electronics in Glenview over by me. So we're going to have a surprise for you sometime next week, later in the week. We're going to have some head-to-head comparisons between X95J, QNED90, QNED99, Z9J. These are all large-size TVs. They're all super expensive or just somewhat expensive. And we're going to get some early impressions about how they look head-to-head, fully calibrated, right? So hold on. We're going to get some of this content later in the week so to help you guys decide. But yes, good question.
Cool.
And Brad, thank you for the super sticker. Always welcomed. And thank you for being a regular as well. And we're going to have one more question and we're done. Everyone, if we don't get to your question, next time, please. Mustafa, Sony Black, perfect. Performance isn't good on a Sony, though. Sony buys their panels from LG. Why? Processing other. So let's answer this straight up. Sony this year specifically wanted to get their near black. They didn't want to hold on to that black because it looks like it's crushing. So instead, they get out of it faster than LG. That makes it less accurate, but more pleasant. It was a subjective/artistic decision by Sony. They felt getting out of black faster is more pleasant, whereas LG just goes with the source. Whatever the source has, we'll do it. So it's an artistic decision, and we're talking about the closest percentage to black, right? I tell you guys, unless you have the right content, you will not notice it. But Classy can address that more because he's been digging into it, and it can't be adjusted. It can't be fixed. It's Sony's color science. So yeah. Anyway, thank you for everyone for being here. Thank you again, my friend KG, for helping out.
Hey,
any
questions?
Me
on. Let me real quick talk
yeah. What's happening on your channel? Let us know. Yeah, so, get us excited before you leave.
Yeah, I just posted some Samsung TV settings. So if you have a Samsung TV, head on to my channel. They kind of work for all TVs, honestly. I tried it on the QN90A and I tried it on the Q90T, and they're pretty similar. So like Samsung hasn't really changed the way their settings work the last couple of years. I find these settings to work for me pretty good. I'm not claiming they're the best, but you should try them out at least. And then on Friday, I'm having a live stream at 4 p.m. Pacific time. So I'd like to see you guys there if you're available. And I got a reality creation video coming on soon.
Excellent.
I don't know when yet, but
yeah, I have to say, Samsung has so many settings, and with their constant firmware updates to quote unquote improve it, who knows what it does. So thank you so much for digging into that. because I normally just leave my thing as is because it's already been calibrated. I don't want to touch anything, right? But if you
Yeah.
find something interesting, thanks for sharing, KG, for sure.
No
All
problem.
right. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And until next time, pass the remote, everyone. Thanks again.